Elemental damage. It is the single most important thing when understanding why you're probably dying too much in Borderlands 4. This is something that has been present through all of the Borderlands, and if you're not a veteran of the series, it's not something that the game particularly explains to you. So in this video today, we're going to go through each and every one of the elements: incendiary, shock, corrosive, cryo, and radiation, and explain how those elements work from a damage perspective, and what things they do additional damage to, what things they suffer from, so on and so forth. This information is in the game, but it's a little nested and hidden, and I'll show you how to find all that. But in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge of my videos, this chart is the entire chart that you need to know. You don't need to really even watch the rest of this video if you don't want. I'm just going to be explaining more stuff and actually showing you practical examples. But you can see right here, the important thing about this chart is this is broken up by the columns. So the health bar, the red bar right here, your shields, and then your armor. This is for Borderlands 3, but it follows the same rules. And what I like about this chart is it doesn't show set percentages. Just know that fire does more damage to health, but shock and corrosive do less damage to health. Shields, shock does the most extra damage towards shields, while radiation does a little bit more, well, does more damage to shields, versus corrosive and cryo do no extra damage to shields. You'll notice too at the top, kinetic does no bonus damage to health or shields, but it has a penalty to armor. It used to be around 20%. I think it's roughly the same now. But when we take a look at armor, everything has its damage reduced against armor except for corrosive, which does more damage against armor, and cryo, which does a little bit more damage against armor. Now, in addition to that, every single element will also have a secondary, maybe tertiary effect. Fire, for example, will give you damage over time. Shock will electrocute enemies, which does lock them down, and then also does damage over time. Disabling vehicles is a Borderlands 3 mechanic. We don't worry about that here. Corrosive will melt enemies, which is kind of a way that they die. So it's not really too crazy of a thing, but they also will do damage over time. Just know that fire, shock, corrosive, and just fire, shock, and corrosive, they do differing amounts of damage over time, and they will also be dependent upon your build. Lastly, our two things at the end here are cryo. Cryo will freeze enemies, and radiation will irradiate, and then those enemies that are irradiated will explode if they die while irradiated. So that's too long to watch this entire video. I'm going to go into how you find this information. I'm going to show you the practical examples of them and give you a little bit more information on it. But if that's all you want to know, please feel free to shut the video down. I want to be respectful of your time. If you are heading out though, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. Also, if you have not yet picked up Borderlands 4, you can use my Fanatical link below. Helps me out a ton. I get an 8% commission, but it also gets me extra treats from my mini Australian Shepherd. Also, too, if you need help with beginner guides or stuff like that, I have a playlist with all my Borderlands 4 videos linked in the upper right-hand corner. But let's get started here on the number one reason you are always dying in Borderlands 4. So before we get into a lot of the details of elements, let's break down how to find out that element information we talked about. So that chart was from Borderlands 3, and there is some information that is wrong, but still, for the most part, it follows the same theme. Basically, what's wrong about it is that some things, which maybe it said that they don't do very much damage, actually do more damage, whatever it is. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. But what you want to take a look at is here, at every single weapon in this inventory screen, that icon on the upper right is representative of the element. So this weapon is a kinetic damage. That's what that little bullet means. This is, of course, for our shock and our radiation, our corrosive, our cryo, and incendiary. But what we want to do is inspect any one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and use Y on the keyboard because I'm using a PC, but then if I hover over this, it's going to show me exactly that same style of information. We know that this is very strong against flesh, but this time around it's very weak against armor and shields, not just weak. So we know that this is definitely not something I want to use against armor or shields. Also, here's a corrosive. Corrosive is very weak against flesh and shields. That would have been a double down arrow. Now it's very strong against armor. So we already knew that it was good against armor, but now it is particularly bad against health and shields. So going into some of these other ones, we didn't do these two. Shock is weak against flesh and armor, but very strong against shields. And radiation does normal damage to flesh, weak against armor, and strong to shields. Let's go into, I think, our last one here. We didn't do cryo yet. Cryo is going to show us normal against flesh, strong against armor, and very weak against shield. So if you forget this, you're like, I mean, I'm not going to memorize that damn chart. Don't worry about it. Just inspect the item and you'll be able to find each and pretty much every one of those respective elements and what they're good against and what they're weak against. It's the easiest way to understand it. And one thing that is worth noting, and I'm not 100% sure this is a carryover into 4 just yet because I haven't been able to test it a whole ton, but typically a gun that has elemental damage will do a flat amount of damage, whatever that number is. The reason you would choose kinetic is that kinetic often has a higher damage amount. So if it's 2 guns that are exactly the same, but one is elemental, whatever element, and one is kinetic, obviously, yes, if that element is attacking the thing it's strong against, it's going to do more damage. But I'm talking about the actual damage number for kinetic is typically higher to offset the fact that it doesn't have any strengths against anything. It just does normal damage against everything, but it's weak against armor. So that is the trade-off to using kinetic, is that it will natively be a higher damage value. I don't think I have a practical example here. Usually a Jacob's thing is a good example here, but here's a, if I have any other sniper rifles, we'll do this by, how did you do it by type? Guess not. So here's a sniper rifle that's radiation damage, and here's a Jacob's rifle. That's one level difference, but this is 152 damage. This is 249. So that's kinetic, right? So that's just to give you a real quick on the fly example of one where this is just doing kinetic damage. So it has a vastly higher damage, but this will favor specific damage types. So with this weapon, I'm going to be able to do, as we know, one more time, extra damage to shields and a lot of extra damage to shields between these two. So that is where you'd find all this elemental information. Let's now break into some more information about elements. So the first element I want to talk about is cryo. And I'm talking about cryo first because I think it's the one that's maybe the least self-explanatory because of this term right here, cryo efficiency. Cryo efficiency is a little convoluted. I'm not going to get too lost in the weeds on this and explain all the math behind it and everything. But basically, this cryo efficiency number, the higher the efficiency number, the faster you freeze a target. And when you freeze a target, it will take additional damage, regardless of if it's flesh, armor, shields, whatever. Basically, if they're frozen, they're going to, I think it's something like ridiculous, like 200% additional damage, I think is what it was. But either way, cryo efficiency allows you to freeze them quicker. So I'm going to go just attack some monsters really quick just to show you what that looks like. This might go terribly. So you see how he gets more and more frosty? He's getting closer and closer to me dying, to getting frozen and then just whatever. But now he's frozen, but he just so happened to be dead. But that is how that efficiency works. You're basically trying to freeze someone with that efficiency. And the higher the efficiency value, the faster in which you can freeze them. So that's really the main draw, though, of using cryo. It's being able to freeze people for amplified damage. Of course, you would then lean into this with any skills that you're going to be tapping into, anything like that. There is no damage over time of cryo. It does slow people down the more that you do that build up until they're completely frozen. The big kind of wombo combo there is freeze them and then punch them, and it tries to do even more damage, I believe. I believe melee does even more damage to chilled targets. But that's cryo. It's pretty self-explanatory from its actual effect, but understanding the under the hood values of it, I think, is a little bit convoluted. Now, for our next one, we're going to talk about fire or incendiary. Now, what you'll notice with everything else outside of cryo is a percentage chance to inflict a status effect. Now, a status effect is just simply that number right there that says 48 damage a second. So it's a 7% chance that it will light on fire and take 48 damage a second. It's not 7% chance every time you press the button. It's 7% chance per bullet or pellet or whatever it is. Since so many guns in this game are so unique across so many things, this is a shotgun that's shooting 4 pellets. That's what that multiple 52 by 4 or x4. It's going to be shooting 4 pellets. So it's a 7% chance per pellet that hits. So yeah, technically 7% chance when you press the button, but multiply that across 4. But not really, that's not how multiplicative things work. But either way. And we know Incendiary is going to do particularly good damage against flesh. So the kind of trick is cracking someone's shields, breaking someone's armor, and hopefully they have exposed flesh. Sometimes you destroy shields and then they have armor, so you're not going to be using this at all. But this is why you would have different forms of elemental damage to tap into. Let's go ahead and let me also show you too, just a quick example. I wish I had the same exact, some guns you have like, oh, you can just swap this back and forth between a kinetic and a fire. But I was going to show you how much more of a damage bonus it is. So here's a guy right here. Oh, so yeah, he got lit on fire. All right, he may have also blown up. So you can see how much damage, 408 damage with that bad boy. Now I'm just going to switch to a kinetic one. This person over here, that's at 448, but this thing does already 20 more points of raw damage or something like that sort. You can see against shields, though, we know that if I switch back to this, against shields, this is just not going to do damage, a bunch of damage. Right? 146. I mean, it still does something, but it's just not a lot. So that is how their Incendiary works. It's going to be stacking up that status chance. I can keep shooting this too to try and show that part off. Now that shield's gone, it's already got that, you can see that it's losing health. Incendiary is on the target. It visibly shows that is being incended. And I can also use my weapon that does flame damage too. So use your skills, leverage those same capabilities to do that actual damage. Next up, we're going to use the same weapon to discuss 2 different elements, but we're going to break them into 2 different sections. So first off, let's talk about shock. So we know with this weapon, we're going to be doing additional damage to shields. So with this, we're really going to nuke shields down, but we really won't be able to capitalize on killing a target because very few targets are purely shield. You'll find them in the game, but usually they have a shield and then a flesh or armor. So we'll have to deal with that. Just again, as a note worth noting, we have the same rule that we have with Incendiary. It's a 33% chance that this thing will become electrocuted, taking 173 damage a second. So let's find a target with some shields and mulch through them. We have found some targets. Let's have some fun. There's one way back here. 268, completely popping their shields, right? And, just for good measure, this is just a kinetic thing, and obviously the shield's gone, so it's dead now. But if I shoot at that thing, so it's 448, which is actually pretty impressive for this weapon. It's also a pretty good damn weapon. But we want to be able to use that shock on. I'm going to try to just body shot it, try to get it electrocuted. Because I've noticed too that typically when you're dealing with any kind of shields typically don't have very high hit points. Oh, remember, I'm using the wrong weapon. Yep. There we go. Well, that's the result of killing someone with electricity. Come over here. Here we go. There. So they're electrocuted right now, taking perpetual damage from the electrocution. And it ticks them away and then eventually melts them. I mean, honestly, having an electric source of damage, I think, is the one thing that you need to make sure you're doing more than anything, because dealing with armor is not that bad. But dealing with shields is rough because you're going to deal with a lot of order units that have shields, and it's going to be a pain in the ass if you're not prepared for it. I mean, even though, this thing is it's weak against flesh, but you can still take care of things with flesh. Just kind of know that, right? Like, don't think that, oh man, this is a target that is very weak against this. I'll never be able, I have to switch off. It's really just dealing with shields and armor with the respective proper element. Same thing here for continuity's sake. We're looking at radiation, 33% chance to deliver 59 damage a second. Now, radiation is unique though. This is irradiating things which will do them damage over time for sure, but it will also explode once they die. The explosion seems to be a little bit changed here because exploding used to be the primary thing for radiation. In fact, in previous Borderlands, explosion used to be its own damage type. So things have definitely changed from game to game. So just kind of be aware of that if you are coming in as a veteran, or if you've seen information from other games online, it is a little bit different here. But we know that just like this is strong against shields, but not very strong. So note that. But it is also normal damage against flesh. So you do have that capability. So we're now going to pop this bad boy into radiation mode. And just as an example, if we shoot this person right here with this weapon, it did like, I think it said like 300. Okay, now they're just gone. Now they're just gone. You know, maybe a sniper rifle was not the practical use case for this. But now that person is irradiated, they're taking damage, they're taking damage, they're taking damage, and I didn't kill him. The 33% chance. There we go. So that person exploded because they were irradiated when they died. So that is how we would use radiation, try to help do extra damage to shields. Not as much, of course, as shock, but it is just another damage source. And depending on who you're playing, like if you're playing Harlow, who has access to tons of radiation, it's a great thing. What I've noticed is radiation is probably the hardest element to come by, unless your character can do it natively, like Harlow can. So being able to tap into it is just another way to do damage to shields and also damage to flesh on a reliable basis, right? You're not dealing with well, there's your radiation explosion. Hey, okay, that is, I'm trying to exposit, dude. But that's just an example of why you would want to use radiation over lightning. It gives you a lot more area of effect control, and it helps you do more additional damage to health, something that shock cannot do. Our last element to talk about is corrosive. Now, corrosive here do the same thing as our other ones with a 9% chance. It's got 173 damage per second when it does apply its actual status effect. It is also very weak to flesh and very weak to shields, but it is very strong to armor. It will delete armor. Now, we're going to show you how this works, but we're also going to keep in mind that we might have to deal with some shields too. So we want to be able to flex back and forth to something that might have some kind of lightning. I don't have it on my weapons. I have it on an ability, so I'm not worried about it, but just know that sometimes to get to that gooey center, you're going to need to deal with shields first. So behind this box should be someone with, aha. That is just an immediate kill. That felt great. And there should be another guy over here somewhere. I try to line these up as best I can. There it is. Just an immediate kill. Now, if I were to switch away from corrosive, let's switch over. In fact, actually, this is a standard, yeah, kinetic and kinetic. 101. Okay, this is probably a better example. We find another one with. See, that took 2 shots in that case. I mean, yeah, we killed him, but took 2 shots. Versus just that corrosive will absolutely delete him. And that's kind of the big key, right? Is you want to be able to use corrosive when you need it and switch off of it when you don't. I thought one of these had shields but I guess not. And again, you can still deal with stuff that has shields. It's going to cost you more ammo, and that's the thing that you kind of don't want. So you'll be using corrosive when you are dealing with any kind of enemy that has armor and, ooh, dying in the middle of your video, as you do. Let's just not lose all that money, huh? But again, use corrosive to deal with armor so that you can then kill things as fast as you can in hopefully 1 or 2 hits. We've gone through all the complexities of our elements, but one important thing is understanding when you should not use an element, even if a situation calls for it, and that's resisting. It is why there are overlapping damage values for specific things, right? Multiple things do damage towards armor. Multiple things do damage towards shields. And it's easy to find what something is resist. Maybe you ran into it yourself. You've already seen it. But you'll see a health bar. And next to it will be the icon that corresponds to the damage type that you're trying to use. So I've put myself in a situation where I'm almost going to die to show you this. This, okay, well, you know, dude, I'm trying to do a video and it's just rude. It's just goddamn rude, this game. There's a guy back here who is resistant to something. Not him, but it's him. So you see that he has resistance to corrosive, right? Because that matches the exact symbol that this weapon is. Let's go ahead and shoot him. We've seen what something takes less or more damage, but when something's resistant, it takes 0 damage. But it can still affect them with a status effect. That's what I wanted you to show you in that instance. So he still took damage from the a grenade in this economy. So he still took damage from the effect he was resistant to, because the game seems to look at status effects and element damage as 2 separate things. And because of that, just know that even if they're resistant, you can fill them with whatever it is and still get the status effect and still kind of do that damage over time. So just be mindful of that. But resistances are a big hurdle you're going to deal with when it comes to elements, especially if you're trying to rely on a specific one to do that specific damage type. And the last thing I do want to talk about is status effects, elemental damage, and how it can be applied outside of your weapons. And just very simply, look at your ordnance, because ordnance has the exact same things, right? All the same stuff as your weapons. It's going to have all those values, but it's usually at the same time, you'll notice that the efficiency of this is very high. You'll notice that the chance of this is higher. So usually it has a very well scaling efficiency or chance that is just a little bit higher than your typical weapon of some sort of comparable damage amount. So it's usually easy to apply those, but even your shields are going to help resist some of the effects that you're going to deal with in the world. So for example, here, this is going to give us cryo resist. This is going to give us shock resist. That's going to give us radiation resist. And lastly, you have your skills, which can help you out with this as well. Like for example, now this does shock and flame. Prior to this, they only did cryo and flame. Having this have a shock was huge. It now opens up for me the ability to not have to worry about carrying some sort of shock weapon around to deal with shields. Using your skills like that is absolutely huge. And if that is your only source of shock, well, maybe put some points into something that is going to help increase that shock damage. Or maybe it's fire, or maybe it's radiation, whatever it is. Use those things to the best of your ability. Also remember too, that sometimes you'll be able to find some enhancements that will help improve specific manufacturer types that can then further increase these benefits to elements. But this is the system I wanted to talk about because I think it's the one thing that's punishing a lot of brand new players to the game. They're getting killed, they're getting swarmed, they're not understanding why sometimes they do great damage and sometimes they don't. It's because the elemental system in this game is very unforgiving, and it works against you as well as it does against enemies. So just know those things. If you've got shields and they're using shock weapons against you, it's going to eat your shields up. Those things are going to help you really push through the game, especially I'm playing on hard, and you saw those enemies were like chaff, low level enemies, and I was still getting hit way too hard. So this will help you really keep a little bit more survivability in check for yourself, but also allow you to do more damage to your enemies. And if you have any tips about elements that I didn't cover in this video, go ahead and let it be known in the comment section below. Borderlands 4 is freshly out, so there's still a lot of stuff to dive into. We want to make sure that there is as much information out as possible. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.